The night sky broke apart with fire. Park Jisoo stood on the deck of his small research boat, watching something fall from the heavens. It was not a meteor. Meteors did not change direction. Meteors did not slow down before they hit the water. He had been collecting water samples 3 kilometers from the shore when the object screamed past him and crashed into the sea. The impact sent waves rocking his boat so hard he nearly fell overboard. Steam rose from where the thing had gone under, and the water glowed with a strange blue light. Jisoo was 32 years old. He was a marine biologist who studied fish and ocean currents. He was not brave. He was not adventurous. He was the kind of man who ate the same breakfast every day and called his mother every Sunday without fail. But something in the water was sinking, and something in Jisoo's chest told him that whatever it was needed help. He started his engine and drove toward the glow. The thing beneath the surface was a ship. Jisoo had seen enough science fiction movies to recognize that much. It was silver and shaped like a teardrop, and it was filling with water fast. Through a cracked window, he saw movement. Someone was inside. Jisoo did not think. He grabbed his diving mask, took a deep breath, and jumped into the cold, dark water. The ship was already 10 meters down and sinking fast. He swam harder than he had ever swam in his life. His lungs burned. His eyes stung from the salt water, but he reached the window and looked inside. She was the most beautiful and terrifying thing he had ever seen. Her skin was pale violet like the color of twilight. Her hair was silver and floated around her head like seaweed. She was tall, much taller than any human, and her eyes were large and dark and filled with stars. Real stars. Like someone had captured pieces of the night sky and put them in her eyes. She was also bleeding. Silver blood flowed from a wound on her head, and she was trapped under a piece of metal that had fallen during the crash. She looked at him through the cracked window. Her strange eyes went wide with shock. She had probably never seen a human before, or maybe she had never expected a human to dive into freezing water to help her. Jisoo did not have time to explain. He punched the cracked window until it broke, cutting his hands in the process. Then he squeezed through the gap and swam to her side. The metal was heavy, but fear gave him strength. He lifted it just enough for her to pull herself free. Then he grabbed her arm and dragged her toward the window. They barely made it. By the time they reached the surface, Jisoo's vision was going dark from lack of oxygen. He gasped and coughed and held onto the alien woman while she did the same. Her blood mixed with the seawater and turned it purple. Getting her into the boat was hard. She was heavy and weak and kept losing consciousness. But Jisoo managed. He always managed. That was the one thing he was good at. Finishing things, not giving up. He covered her with a blanket and drove toward shore, as fast as his little boat could go. He did not go to the harbor. Already he could see lights on the horizon, helicopters, military ships. The whole world had probably seen the crash. They would be looking for the ship and whoever was inside it. Jisoo did not know why he made the choice he did. Maybe he was afraid of what the military would do to her. Maybe he had read too many stories about governments cutting open aliens to see how they worked. Or maybe he just looked at her face, peaceful now in unconsciousness, and decided that she deserved a choice in what happened next. He took her to his grandmother's old fishing hut on the cliffs north of town. The place had been abandoned for years, but it still had a roof and walls and a bed. He carried her inside, laid her down, and began to treat her wounds. Jisoo was not a doctor, but he knew basic first aid. Her biology was different from his, but blood was blood, and wounds needed to be cleaned and covered. He did his best. She woke up on the second day. He was sitting beside her bed, reading a book, when her eyes opened. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said something in a language that sounded like music and wind and distant thunder. He did not understand a word. She tried again, then again. Each time she grew more frustrated. Finally, she pointed at herself and said one word slowly and clearly. Nira. Jisoo understood. He pointed at himself. Jisoo. She repeated his name. Her accent made it sound strange and beautiful. Jisoo. He smiled. She did not smile back. Maybe her species did not smile, but something in her eyes softened. Over the next 3 weeks, Jisoo came to the hut every day. He brought food. At first, she refused to eat anything, but hunger eventually won. She seemed to like fish and rice. She did not like kimchi at all. He taught her Korean. It was slow work. He would point at things and say the words, table, chair, water, sky. She learned fast, faster than any human could. Within a week, she could speak in simple sentences. Within 2 weeks, she could have basic conversations. He learned about her too. She was Velari. Her people had traveled the stars for thousands of years. They were old and wise and powerful. To them, humans were like children. Interesting, perhaps, but not important. She had been on a mission when her ship was damaged. She had crashed on Earth by accident. Her people would come for her eventually. They always did. "Why do you help me?" she asked him one night. Her Korean was still rough but clear enough. Jisoo thought about it. "You were hurt," he said. "That is enough reason." She stared at him for a long time. "My people would not do this," she said. "Help a stranger, ask for nothing." "Maybe they should," Jisoo said. She did not answer. But that night, she slept without nightmares for the first time since the crash. And Jisoo sat beside her, reading his book, and wondered what it meant that an alien from the stars could feel so lonely. The Velari ships came 3 weeks and 2 days after the crash. Nira knew they were coming before Jisoo did. She felt them somehow, through some connection he could not understand. She stood at the window of the hut and looked up at the sky. "They are here," she said. Jisoo stood beside her. "What will you tell them about me?" "Nothing," she said. "It is safer for you." She turned to look at him. In 3 weeks he had learned to read some of her expressions. Right now she looked sad, confused, like she was feeling something she did not have words for. "Thank you, Jisoo," she said, "for saving me, for teaching me, for asking nothing." He nodded. "Will I see you again?" She did not answer. Instead, she walked out the door and climbed the cliff path to the top. Jisoo followed her. The ship that descended from the clouds was beautiful and terrible. It made no sound as it landed. A door opened and figures stepped out. They looked like Nira but moved with cold precision. They did not look at Jisoo at all. To them, he was not worth noticing. Nira walked toward her people. At the base of the ship, she stopped and looked back. Jisoo stood alone on the cliff, the wind moving through his hair, his hand still bandaged from when he had broken her window. He raised one hand in a small wave. She did not wave back, but she looked at him for a long moment, memorizing his face. Then she stepped onto the ship, and the door closed, and the ship rose into the sky and vanished among the stars. Jisoo stood on the cliff for a long time after she was gone. He told himself it was over. She would forget him. Her people lived for hundreds of years. To her, he was just a brief moment in a very long life. But he could not forget her. The woman with stars in her eyes who had slept in his grandmother's fishing hut, who had learned his language word by word, who had looked at him like he was the strangest and most wonderful thing she had ever seen. He went back to his job. He collected his water samples. He ate the same breakfast every day and called his mother every Sunday. But sometimes, late at night, he looked up at the stars and wondered if she was looking back. 8 years passed like water through fingers. On a world 60,000 light-years from Earth, Nira stood before a window that showed the endless stars. Her chambers were beautiful. White stone walls carved with ancient patterns. Furniture made from metals humans had not yet discovered. Everything perfect, everything empty. She was no longer the wounded pilot who had crashed on a primitive world. She was senior diplomat Nira of House Solith, one of the most respected voices in the Galactic Concord. She negotiated treaties between species who had been traveling the stars when humans were still living in caves. Kings and emperors sought her counsel. Her words could start wars or prevent them. None of it mattered. She touched the window and the view changed. Earth appeared before her, a small blue marble floating in the darkness, so fragile, so insignificant. The conquered barely acknowledged its existence. Humans were too young, too primitive, too brief. And yet, Neera had tried to forget him. She had told herself that the gratitude she felt was simply that, gratitude, nothing more. He had saved her life and she was thankful. That was all. But 8 years later, she still remembered the exact shade of his eyes, the way he laughed when she mispronounced Korean words, the patience in his voice when he taught her, night after night, word after word. She remembered how he looked standing on that cliff as her ship flew away, small and alone against the endless sky, raising his hand in farewell. No one had ever looked at her the way he did, like she was not a diplomat or a Velari or a representative of an ancient house, like she was simply Neera, a person, nothing more and nothing less. Among her own people, every conversation was a game, every word had hidden meaning, every kindness expected something in return. That was how the Velari had survived for so long. They calculated, they planned, they never gave without taking. Jisoo had given her everything and asked for nothing. She pulled up records about Earth. The planet had changed in 8 years. Humans had found pieces of crashed alien ships and figured out how some of the technology worked. They had built their first vessel capable of traveling between stars. It was ugly and slow and dangerous, but they had built it. They had actually done it. The Conquered was worried. Humans were not supposed to advance this fast. They were supposed to stay on their small planet for another 1,000 years at least, but humans did not follow the rules. They never did. Neera was not worried, she was proud. She did not understand why, but she was. She searched for news about Jisoo specifically. It took time. Humans had strange ideas about privacy and their information networks were chaotic, but eventually she found him. He had left the research station 2 years after she departed. He had moved to Seoul and opened a medical clinic, but not a normal clinic. He treated aliens. The first visitors from other worlds had started coming to Earth about 5 years ago, mostly scientists and merchants, curious about the strange young species that was making so much noise. Some of them got sick or injured. Human hospitals did not know how to help them. Jisoo did. He had studied alien biology in his spare time. He had built equipment to treat species he had never met. When a Corvani trader broke her leg in Seoul, Jisoo was the one who fixed it. When a Tellurian diplomat had an allergic reaction to Earth food, Jisoo saved his life. Word spread. Now aliens came to Earth specifically to visit his clinic. The human who heals aliens, they called him. The strange man who treated everyone the same, no matter what world they came from. Neera read story after story. Each one made her chest hurt in a way she could not explain. He had never married. He lived alone above his clinic. He worked long hours and charged only what people could afford. When asked why he did it, he always gave the same answer. They need help, that is enough reason. The same words he had spoken to her 8 years ago. You are doing it again. Neera turned from the window. Torin stood in her doorway. He was tall even by Velari standards, with sharp features and cold eyes. They had worked together for 6 years. He was efficient and intelligent and utterly without warmth. Doing what? She asked. Looking at that primitive world. He walked into the room without being invited. You have been distracted lately. Everyone has noticed. I am fine. You are thinking about that human. His voice carried disgust. The one who found you when you crashed. It has been 8 years, Neera. By Velari standards, that is nothing. By human standards, it is a significant portion of their tiny lives. Whatever debt you owed him has been paid by time. Nira felt anger rise in her chest. It was never about debt. Torin looked at her with something like pity. Then what is it about? Surely you are not entertaining romantic notions about a creature who will be dead in another 50 years. That would be beneath you. She did not answer. She could not answer, because she did not know what she felt. All she knew was that 8 years had passed and she still thought about him every day, still wondered what he was doing, still wished she could hear his voice again. Torin sighed. The council is watching you, Nira. You are valuable to them, but if you continue this foolishness, they will find someone else. He left without saying goodbye. That night, Nira did something she had never done before. She accessed the communication network and searched for ways to contact Earth. There were channels, official diplomatic ones. She could send a message to his clinic, just a few words, just to let him know she remembered. Her finger hovered over the command. She did not press it. What would she say? What right did she have to disrupt his life after 8 years of silence? He had probably moved on, found someone else, built a life that had nothing to do with the strange alien woman who had crashed into his ocean. She was being foolish. Torin was right. She was a senior diplomat. She had responsibilities. She could not throw everything away for a human she had known for 3 weeks almost a decade ago. But she could not stop thinking about him either. Days passed, then weeks. Nira went through the motions of her life. She attended meetings. She negotiated treaties. She smiled at the right moments and said the right things. Inside, she felt hollow. One night, she received a report about Earth. Humans were preparing to send their second interstellar ship. This one was bigger, better. They were learning fast. The Conquered was debating whether to make official contact. Some wanted to welcome humans into the galactic community. Others wanted to isolate them before they became a threat. Nira read the report 3 times. Then she made a decision. She walked to the office of the Concord's assignment coordinator. He was a small, nervous Telusian who handled diplomatic postings. "I want to request a transfer," she said. He looked up at her with surprise. "Transfer? You are one of our most senior diplomats. Where could you possibly want to go?" "Earth," she said. "I want to be part of the delegation that makes first official contact with humanity." He stared at her. "Earth, that primitive backwater, it is barely worth our attention. The posting would be a significant step down for someone of your status." "I know. Your family will be furious." "I know. The council will see this as wasted potential." "I know." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed and pulled up a form. "Very well, if you insist, I will submit the request, but I think you are making a mistake." Nira signed the form. "Maybe," she said, "but it is my mistake to make." She walked back to her chambers. Through the window, Earth still hung in the darkness, small and blue and impossibly far away. But not for long. She had spent 8 years running from her memories. 8 years telling herself that what she felt was gratitude and nothing more. 8 years pretending that a human doctor and soul meant nothing to her. She was done pretending. She did not know what would happen when she returned. Maybe he had forgotten her. Maybe he had found someone else. Maybe he would see her again and feel nothing at all. But she had to know. She touched the window, and Earth grew larger in her view. "Wait for me, Jisoo," she whispered. "I am coming back." The stars had never looked so bright. Seoul was not the city Nira remembered from 8 years ago. Back then, Earth had been a primitive world barely aware of life beyond its sky. Now, the city gleamed with change. Human buildings reached toward the clouds alongside structures clearly influenced by alien design. Transport pods floated through the air next to traditional vehicles. Holographic advertisements flickered in a dozen languages, some of them not from Earth. Humans had adapted fast, perhaps faster than anyone in the Concord had expected. Nira arrived with the official diplomatic delegation. There were ceremonies and speeches and meetings that lasted for hours. Politicians and leaders wanted to shake hands with the aliens who had finally come to acknowledge humanity's place among the stars. Neera smiled and said the right things. She played her part perfectly. But inside, her heart was racing. She had been on Earth for 3 days before she found the courage to visit his clinic. 3 days of telling herself she was ready. 3 days of almost going and then turning back. On the 4th day, she finally went. The clinic was in a busy district filled with shops and restaurants. It was a simple building, nothing special from the outside. A small sign above the door read, "Park Medical Clinic, all species welcome." Neera stood outside for almost an hour. She watched patients go in and out. Humans, aliens, a Corvani woman with purple scales, a Telutian male with 4 arms. They all walked through the same door. They all came out looking better than when they entered. She was being foolish. She should just go inside. She was a senior diplomat. She had negotiated treaties that affected billions of lives. She was not afraid of anything. Except this, except him. Finally, she took a deep breath and walked through the door. The waiting room was small but clean. Chairs lined the walls. A young human woman sat behind a desk, looking at a computer screen. She glanced up when Neera entered. "Welcome," she said in Korean. Then she noticed Neera's violet skin and switched to basic Galactic Common. "How can I help you?" "I am here to see Dr. Park," Neera said. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." The woman frowned slightly. "The doctor is very busy today. Perhaps you could come back tomorrow." "Tell him that Neera is here." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "He will see me." The woman looked doubtful, but she picked up a communication device and spoke into it quietly. A moment passed. Then her eyes went wide. "He will see you now," she said, her voice full of surprise. "Through that door." Neera walked down a short hallway. Her legs felt strange, heavy, like she was walking through water. The door at the end was open. She stepped through. And there he was. Jisoo stood in the middle of the room, frozen in the act of organizing medical supplies. He was older now. Gray touched his temples. Lines had formed around his eyes and mouth. His shoulders were slightly bent from years of hard work. But his eyes were the same, warm and kind and impossibly gentle. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. That same smile she remembered, the one that had made her feel safe in a world that was not her own. "Neera," he said, as if she had only been gone a few days, "you look well." Something inside her cracked. All the words she had prepared disappeared. All the diplomatic training meant nothing. She opened her mouth to say something profound, something meaningful. "You look old," she said. She immediately wished she could take the words back. But Jisoo just laughed. That warm, uncomplicated laugh she had never been able to forget. "I am old," he said. "That is what humans do. We get old. It is one of our less impressive qualities." He gestured to a chair. She sat. He sat across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "8 years," she finally said. "It has been 8 years." "I know," he nodded. "I counted." She stared at him. "You counted?" "Every day." He said it simply, without embarrassment. "I read about you sometimes, in the news. Senior diplomat Neera of House Solith. Very impressive. I always knew you would do great things. You followed my career." "Of course," he smiled again. "You were the most interesting thing that ever happened to me. How could I not?" Neera did not know what to say. In 8 years of diplomatic work, she had never been speechless. But now, sitting across from this simple human doctor, she could not find words. "I kept the translator," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, the same one she had left behind 8 years ago. "I used it to learn Velari. My accent is terrible, but I can read and write it now." He had learned her language. This human with his brief life had spent years learning a language he might never use, just because it connected him to her. Why, she asked, why would you do that? Because I wanted to understand you better, he said. Even if I never saw you again, I wanted to know where you came from, who your people are, what made you who you are. Neera felt something wet on her cheek. She touched it and found tears. Velari did not cry often. It was considered undignified, but she was crying now. I thought about you, she said. Every day for 8 years, I told myself it was gratitude. I told myself I would forget, but I never did. Jisoo leaned forward. His eyes were gentle. Why did you come back? Because I could not stay away anymore. The words came out in a rush. Because everything I achieved felt empty without someone to share it with. Because I have spent my whole life surrounded by people, and I have never felt more alone. Because when I close my eyes, I still see you standing on that cliff, waving goodbye, and I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed. The room was silent. Jisoo looked at her for a long moment. I wondered the same thing, he said quietly, every night for 8 years. Neera's breath caught. You did. I built this clinic because of you, he gestured around the room. After you left, I could not stop thinking about how alone you must have felt, crashed on a strange world, surrounded by creatures who could not understand you, so I decided to help. If other aliens ever came to Earth, I wanted them to have someone who would treat them kindly, the way I treated you. She stared at him. You built all of this because of me. Because of what you taught me, he smiled sadly. You showed me that the universe was bigger than I ever imagined, that there were wonders beyond our sky, but also that everyone, no matter where they come from, needs kindness, needs someone who sees them as a person. They talked through the night. He told her about the clinic, about the patients he had helped, about the challenges of treating species he had never encountered before, about the long nights and the hard choices and the moments of joy when he saved someone who had no one else to turn to. She told him about her work, about the politics and the pressure and the loneliness that came with power, about the family who expected her to be perfect and the colleagues who saw her as a tool, about the emptiness she felt despite having everything. They talked until the sun came up. Finally, when the morning light filled the room, Neera asked the question she had been afraid to ask. Why did you never try to contact me? Jisoo looked at his hands. What could I offer you? He said. You are a diplomat for an interstellar civilization. I am a doctor in soul. I have nothing. I am nothing. I did not want to be a burden to you or an embarrassment. Neera felt her heart break. This good, kind man had spent 8 years thinking he was not enough, that he had nothing to offer her. You are not nothing, she said. Her voice was fierce. You are the only person who has ever seen me as just me. Not a diplomat, not a Velari, not a representative of some ancient house, just Neera, a person who was hurt and scared and alone. You saved me, Jisoo, not just my life. You saved my soul. She reached across and took his hand. His skin was warm, human warm, different from her own. I came back for you, she said. Not for Earth, not for diplomacy, for you, only you. Jisoo looked at their joined hands. Then he looked at her face. I am going to die, he said quietly. In another 40 or 50 years I will be gone. You will still be young. I know. It will hurt. Loving me will hurt. I know. And you still came back. Neera squeezed his hand. I would rather have 40 years with you than 400 years without you. For the first time she saw tears in his eyes, human tears, warm and real. I never stopped loving you, he said, not for a single day. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. It was a Velari gesture of deep affection. He did not pull away. Then let me love you back, she whispered, for however long we have. Outside the sun rose over Seoul, a new day, a new beginning. And two hearts from two different worlds finally beat as one. The news spread faster than light. Senior diplomat Neera of House Solith was seeing a human, not just any human, a simple doctor with no wealth, no power, no status. A man who would be dead in a few decades while she remained young for centuries. Her family's response came within hours. The message was from her mother, Lady Varys of House Solith. Her face filled the screen with cold fury. "You have shamed us," she said. Her voice was ice. "Shamed our house, shamed our bloodline, a human Neera, a creature that lives for barely a heartbeat. What are you thinking?" Neera stood before the screen in her quarters at the diplomatic compound. "I am thinking that I am happy for the first time in my life." "Happy?" Her mother laughed without humor. "Happiness is for the weak. You are Velari. You have responsibilities, duties. You cannot throw everything away for some primitive." "His name is Jisoo, and he is not primitive. He is the kindest person I have ever known." "Kind?" Lady Varys shook her head. "Kindness does not matter. Legacy matters. Honor matters. What will people say when they learn that a daughter of House Solith is breeding with a human?" Neera felt anger rise in her chest. "We are not breeding. We are in love." "Love?" Her mother spoke the word like it was poison. "Love is a human weakness. We do not love. We form strategic alliances. We build power. That is how we have survived for 10,000 years." "Maybe surviving is not enough," Neera said quietly. "Maybe I want to live." Her mother stared at her for a long moment. Then her expression turned cold, colder than before. "If you continue this, you will no longer be welcome in House Solith. You will be removed from the family records. You will be nothing." Neera met her mother's eyes. "Then I will be nothing with him, and that will be enough." She ended the call. Her hands were shaking. She had just destroyed her relationship with her family, everything she had been raised to protect, everything she had been taught to value. And she felt lighter than she had in years. The Concord's response was slower but equally harsh. She received a formal message from the council. Her position as senior diplomat was being reviewed. Her judgment was being questioned. There were concerns about her ability to represent Velari interests when she was clearly compromised by personal attachments. They did not fire her, that would have been too direct. Instead, they reassigned her to meaningless tasks, filing reports, attending ceremonies, smiling for pictures. They were hoping she would give up, walk away from Jisoo and return to her proper place. She did not give up. Instead, she spent every free moment at his clinic. She helped where she could. She learned human medicine. She met his patients and listened to their stories. She became part of his world. 3 months passed, then 6. Their relationship deepened. Jisoo taught her to cook Korean food. She taught him Velari meditation techniques. They laughed together, fought together, made peace together. It was the happiest time of her life. Then the attack happened. It was late evening. Neera was at the diplomatic compound, finishing reports. Jisoo was at the clinic, treating a Telushan child with a broken wing. She heard about it on the news first. A group of humans had attacked the clinic. They called themselves Earth First and believed that aliens were a threat to humanity. They hated the creatures from other worlds who walked their streets. They hated the humans who helped them even more. They had set fire to the clinic. Neera did not remember leaving the compound. She did not remember the transport ride across the city. All she remembered was running through the smoke and flames, screaming his name. She found him in the alley behind the clinic. He was bleeding, a cut on his forehead, burns on his hands, but he was alive, and he was not alone. Behind him stood 3 aliens, the Telushan child, a Corvani woman, an elderly Velari male who had come to Earth for medical treatment. Jisoo had gotten them out of the burning building. He had shielded them with his own body when the attackers tried to stop them. His clothes were torn, his face was bruised, but his eyes burned with something Neera had never seen before. Not anger, not fear. Defiance. "Get away from them," one of the attackers shouted. There were 5 of them, human males with weapons and hate in their hearts. "Move aside, we only want the aliens." Jisoo did not move. "You will have to go through me," he said. The leader laughed. "You would die for these monsters." "They are not monsters," Jisoo's voice was steady. "They are patients, they are people, and yes, I would die for them just as I would die for any person in need." Neera felt something shift inside her. She had known Jisoo was kind. She had known he was good. But she had never seen this before. This iron core beneath the gentle surface. This absolute refusal to abandon those who needed him. She stepped forward, placing herself beside him. The attackers saw her violet skin and hesitated. "I am Senior Diplomat Neera of House Solith," she said. Her voice rang with authority. "The Galactic Concord is watching this planet. If you harm these people, there will be consequences you cannot imagine." It was a bluff. The Concord probably did not care about a single clinic, but the attackers did not know that. They ran. The next hour was chaos. Police arrived. Medics treated the wounded. Reporters crowded around, shouting questions. The clinic was destroyed, but no one had died. Later, when everything was quiet, Neera sat beside Jisoo in a hospital room. His wounds had been treated. He would recover, but she could not stop looking at him. "You almost died," she said, "for people who were not even your species." "They were my patients." He said it like it was obvious, like there was no other possible choice. Most people would have run, would have saved themselves. Jisoo looked at her with tired eyes. "I could not run, Neera. I became a doctor because of you, because of what you taught me. That kindness matters, that every life matters. If I had run, everything I believe would have been a lie." Neera took his hand, his bandaged, burned hand. "My family thinks you are weak. They think humans are weak. They think your short lives make you less than us." She squeezed his hand. "They are wrong. You are stronger than any Velari I have ever known. You do not have centuries to think and plan and calculate. You have moments, and you choose to spend those moments saving others. That is not weakness. That is the greatest strength I have ever seen." Jisoo smiled despite his pain. "Your family would hate to hear you say that." "My family can go hang themselves." He laughed, even battered and burned, he laughed. That warm, beautiful laugh. The attack changed things. The news spread across the galaxy. The human doctor who had risked his life to save aliens. The man who stood against violence with nothing but his own body. Suddenly Jisoo was famous, not just on Earth, everywhere. Messages poured in from across the stars, words of support, offers of help. The Concord itself issued a statement praising his bravery. Neera watched it happen with amazement. Her people had looked down on humans for so long, had considered them primitive and brief. But now, because of one man's actions, they were beginning to see something else. Humans were not weak because their lives were short. They were strong because their lives were short. They knew that every moment mattered. They chose to matter while they could. 3 months later, the clinic was rebuilt, bigger than before, better equipped, funded by donations from a dozen worlds. Neera stood beside Jisoo at the opening ceremony. She was wearing human clothes. Her hair was styled in a human fashion. She looked like she belonged. "Are you sure about this?" Jisoo asked quietly. "You gave up everything for me, your family, your position, your whole life." Neera looked at him, this human who had shown her what love really meant, what courage really was. "I did not give up anything," she said. "I finally found everything." She took his hand. "Now let us go inside. We have patients waiting." Together, they walked through the doors of the new clinic. A Velari woman and a human man. Two people from different worlds who had chosen each other against all odds. And in that moment, watching them go, the galaxy began to understand something important about humanity. They burned bright because they burned briefly. And sometimes, that brief flame could light up the entire universe. They married on the cliff, where Jisoo had once stood watching her fly away. It was a small ceremony, 30 guests, half human, half alien. They stood together on the grassy slope overlooking the sea, watching as two people from different worlds became one family. Jisoo wore a traditional Korean hanbok. Neera wore a Velari ceremonial gown that shimmered like starlight. Between them stood a human priest and a Velari elder, speaking words of blessing in two languages. When it was time to exchange vows, Jisoo spoke first. "I am not a poet," he said. "I am just a doctor from a small planet. I cannot offer you wealth or power or immortality. All I can offer is my heart, every beat of it, every day I have left. I give it to you, Neera, all of me, for however long we have." Neera felt tears running down her cheeks, Velari tears. They were considered shameful among her people, but she did not feel shame. She felt free. "My people live for centuries," she said. "We have time for everything, time to plan, time to wait, time to be careful, but I do not want centuries of caution. I want moments of courage. I want to love fiercely even knowing that love will end. I want to live the way you live, Jisoo, burning bright, holding nothing back. You taught me that. You showed me what it means to truly be alive." She took his hands in hers. "I will love you until your last breath, and then I will carry that love with me for the rest of my life. Wherever I go, whatever I do, you will be with me always." The elder and the priest spoke the final words. Jisoo kissed his bride. The guests cheered. And somewhere among the stars, Neera's mother watched the broadcast and wept. Not tears of shame, tears of something she had forgotten how to feel. Years passed, good years, the best of Neera's long life. They lived in a small house near the clinic. Every morning they walked to work together. Every evening they walked home. Jisoo cooked dinner. Neera cleaned up. They sat on their small balcony and watched the stars. Their life was simple, ordinary, perfect. The clinic grew. What had started as one doctor treating aliens became a network of facilities across the planet. Jisoo trained other doctors, wrote textbooks, gave lectures. He became the most famous human in the galaxy. He never changed. Even when leaders from other worlds came to meet him, he treated them the same way he treated everyone else, with kindness, with patience, with that gentle smile that had captured Neera's heart all those years ago. They had children, two of them, hybrid children, human and Velari mixed together, a boy with his father's warm eyes and his mother's violet tint, a girl with her mother's silver hair and her father's stubborn chin. They were impossible according to Velari science. They existed anyway. The galaxy watched their family with fascination. Here was proof that differences did not have to divide, that love could bridge any gap, that the universe was bigger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. Neera's family eventually softened. Not all of them. Some never forgave her, but her mother came to visit. Once. She held her grandchildren and did not know what to say. "They are beautiful," she finally admitted. "Strange but beautiful." "They are loved," Neera said. "That is what matters." Her mother looked at Jisoo, who was playing with the children in the next room. For the first time, she did not look at him with disgust. She looked at him with something approaching respect. "He is a good man," she said quietly. "I was wrong about him." It was not an apology. Velari did not apologize, but it was enough. The years continued to pass. Jisoo grew older. His hair turned completely gray. His hands began to shake. His steps slowed. The fire in his eyes never dimmed, but his body could not keep up with his spirit. Neera watched him age and felt her heart breaking slowly. She had known this day would come, had known from the beginning, but knowing did not make it easier. One night when they were sitting on their balcony watching the stars, Jisoo asked her a question. "Are you afraid?" She knew what he meant. Yes. Of being alone. Of living without you. She looked at him with eyes full of love and sorrow. "You will be gone and I will still be here, for centuries. How am I supposed to do that, Jisoo? How am I supposed to live in a universe without you?" He took her hand. His grip was weaker now, but still warm, still gentle. "You will not be without me," he said. "I will be with you always, in our children, in the clinic, in every life you touch, in every story you tell." He smiled. "You are going to tell our story, Nira, to everyone who will listen, and that story will live forever." She shook her head. "I do not want stories, I want you." "You have me." He squeezed her hand. "You have had me since the moment I pulled you from that sinking ship, and you will have me long after I am gone. That is what love is. It does not end. It just changes form." She leaned her head against his shoulder. They sat there together, watching the stars, holding onto each other. Jisoo died on a Tuesday. He was 87 years old. His children and grandchildren surrounded his bed. Nira held his hand as his breathing slowed. "Thank you," he whispered. Those were his last words, "for coming back." She kissed his forehead. "Thank you for waiting." He closed his eyes, he smiled, and then he was gone. Nira did not cry at the funeral. She stood strong for her children, for his students, for all the people who had loved him. She spoke about his life, his kindness, his courage. She spoke about the night he had pulled her from the sea and changed her forever. The galaxy mourned with her. Messages came from 1,000 worlds. Condolences from species who had never cared about humans before. Jisoo had touched more lives than anyone could count. He was buried on the cliff, the same cliff where they had married, the same cliff where he had once stood watching her fly away. After everyone left, Nira sat by his grave alone. "I do not know how to do this," she whispered. "I do not know how to live without you." The wind blew through the grass. The sea crashed against the rocks below. The stars began to appear in the darkening sky. And somehow in that moment she felt him with her. Not his body, not his voice, but his presence, his love, warm and steady and eternal. She would carry him with her, just as he had promised, for the rest of her long, long life. 50 years later, Nira stood before the Galactic Council. She was old now by Velari standards. Not ancient, but old. She had served as ambassador to a dozen worlds, had helped humanity take its place among the stars, had watched her children and grandchildren grow up and make their own marks on the universe. But today, she was not here to discuss politics. "I want to tell you a story," she said to the assembled representatives. Hundreds of species, thousands of individuals, all watching her. "It is a story about a human, a simple doctor from a small planet. He was not powerful, he was not wealthy. He lived for barely 87 years. By our standards, that is nothing, a heartbeat, a breath." She looked around the chamber. "But in that heartbeat, he changed everything. He showed me what courage really means. He showed me that kindness is strength. He showed me that love does not need centuries to be real." Her voice grew stronger. "We look down on humans because they are brief. We think their short lives make them less than us, but we are wrong. They are not less because they die. They are more because they know they will die and they choose to love anyway. They choose to help strangers anyway. They choose to hope anyway." She thought of Jisoo, his smile, his laugh, his steady, gentle hands. "My husband taught me something that my own people had forgotten. That life is not measured in years. It is measured in moments, in choices, in the love we give and the love we receive." She straightened her shoulders. "Humanity is not a primitive species struggling to catch up with us. They are a reminder of what we have lost, the passion, the urgency, the willingness to burn bright even knowing that the flame will end." She looked at the assembled representatives. "I loved a human. I will never regret it, and I will spend the rest of my life telling his story, so that the galaxy will remember what one small man from one small planet taught me." She smiled, Jisoo's smile. "That brief flames can light up the entire universe." The chamber was silent. Then slowly the applause began. Nira walked out of the chamber and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Beyond time and space and all the distances between worlds, she knew he was watching, waiting for her. And someday, when her own flame finally burned out, she would find him again. But until then, she had stories to tell. Stories about a human who had changed the galaxy. Stories about the man she could never forget. Stories about love that conquered everything. Even death. Even time. Even the endless, eternal stars.